Captain HFY pressed his scaled fingers against the cold metal of his ship's window. Outside, the stars looked different than they used to. They seemed dimmer, fewer. Many systems that once glowed with life now sat empty and dark. The bridge of his patrol ship was quiet. Too quiet. His crew of 6 moved like ghosts, checking their instruments with nervous hands. Everyone knew what they were looking for. Everyone hoped they would not find it. "Captain," called his communications officer, a young Altaran named Velik. "We're getting close to Sector 779. Should we turn back?" HFY looked at the fear in his officer's large, golden eyes. The same fear lived in every being across the galaxy. The fear of them, the Void Hunters. "No," HFY said firmly. "We have our orders. The Coalition needs to know if this sector is clear." 3,000 years ago, the galaxy was full of life. Hundreds of different species traded, explored, and built wonderful things together. Children played on 1,000,000 worlds under 1,000 different suns. Then the Void Hunters came. No one knew where they came from. They appeared like a plague of living crystal, flowing through space in ships that looked like giant twisted gems. They did not want to talk or trade. They only wanted to feed. The Void Hunters ate life itself. They would arrive at a world and drain every living thing. Plants, animals, people. They sucked the very energy from the planet until nothing remained but gray dust and empty stone. Then they moved on to the next world, always hungry, never stopping. The great civilizations tried to fight. The proud Takari Empire sent their finest warriors. The brilliant Zenthok Union built incredible weapons. The peaceful Miralons even tried to talk with the crystal creatures. None of it worked. The Void Hunters kept coming, kept feeding, kept killing. Now only 12 species survived, hiding on heavily protected worlds scattered across what was left of the galaxy. They called themselves the Galactic Coalition, but they were really just the last survivors of a dying universe. HFY's ship moved slowly through the empty space of Sector 1779. His sensors showed nothing but dead rocks and cold asteroids. This was normal. Most of the galaxy looked like this now. "Wait," said his science officer Nora Heth. She was staring at her screen with confusion. "Captain, I'm reading something strange." "Void Hunters?" HFY asked, his heart jumping. "No, sir, it's different. There's a small planet in this system. 3rd one from the star. It looks like it once had life, but now it shows no energy readings at all." HFY frowned. "That's normal for worlds the Hunters have visited." "Yes, but this one is different, the way it died. It's not like the others. There are no crystal formations, no signs of energy drain. It just looks asleep." This was strange. When the Void Hunters finished with a world, they always left behind their mark, twisted crystal structures that grew from the planet's surface like frozen screams. This world had none of that. "Take us closer," HFY ordered. As they approached the small blue and green world, HFY felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, this world had escaped the Hunters. Maybe there were survivors. The planet was beautiful in a sad way. From space, HFY could see the remains of great cities, empty highways and harbors where no ships would ever dock again. But everything looked preserved, like the people had simply vanished one day. "Captain!" Velik shouted suddenly. "Something's happening." Red lights flashed across HFY's control panel. Ancient weapon systems were powering up around the planet. Massive defense platforms that had been dark for centuries suddenly came to life. Energy cannons the size of buildings turned toward their small ship. "Shields up," HFY yelled. "Prepare for—" Then everything stopped. The weapons powered down as quickly as they had awakened. The red lights faded. The planet became quiet again. "What just happened?" Nora Heth whispered. HFY stared at his instruments. According to his ship's computer, the defense systems had scanned them thoroughly in just seconds. They had looked at their ship, their crew, even their DNA. Then the weapons had simply turned off. "It's like they recognized us," he said quietly. "But that's impossible. No one has lived on this world for thousands of years." "Sir," said his communications officer, "I'm picking up a very weak signal from the planet's surface. It's in standard galactic code." Very old standard galactic code. What does it say? It's just coordinates, sir, and a single word repeated over and over. What word? Bellic looked up from his screen with wide eyes. Guardian. Zexai made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running back to Coalition space like his orders said, he chose to investigate. Something about this quiet world called to him. Something about the way the ancient weapons had looked at them and decided not to fire. He sent a message to Coalition Command, telling them about the strange planet and requesting a full research team. Then he set his ship in orbit and waited. 3 days later, Coalition ships arrived. Scientists, archaeologists, and military officers filled the small system. They all wanted to understand what made this world different. Dr. Kithara led the research team down to the planet's surface. She was the Coalition's best xenoarchaeologist, an expert in studying dead civilizations. She had seen the remains of hundreds of worlds that the Void Hunters had destroyed. This one was different from all of them. The cities were empty, but not destroyed. The buildings stood tall and strong. There were no skeletons, no signs of struggle, no evidence of the crystal plague that marked Void Hunter attacks. It was as if everyone had simply gone to sleep one day and never woken up. In the largest city, Dr. Kethara found something that made her heart skip a beat. A monument in the center of the city carved from black stone. It showed figures that looked almost like Alterans, but different. They stood upright on 2 legs instead of 4. They had only 2 eyes instead of 3. Their faces showed something the Coalition races had almost forgotten how to feel. Determination. The writing on the monument was in an ancient language that Dr. Kethara barely recognized. It was old standard galactic code, from before the Void Hunters came. She worked for hours to translate it. When she finally understood the words, she sat down hard on the monument's steps. Her hands shook as she read the message again and again. Here stands the monument to humanity, it said. They chose the long sleep so that others might wake to a free galaxy. When the time is right, they will return. The Guardian watches. The Guardian waits. The Guardian remembers. Dr. Kethara looked around the empty city with new eyes. This was not a dead world. This was a sleeping world. And somewhere beneath her feet, the last hope of the galaxy lay waiting for the right moment to wake up. Above them all, Captain Zexai watched from his ship and wondered what they had really found in this forgotten corner of space. He did not know that his discovery would soon wake the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever known. The Void Hunters had ruled through fear for 3,000 years, but their time was about to end. Humanity was about to wake up. Dr. Kethara could not sleep. For 3 weeks, her team had been digging beneath the human city. Every day brought new discoveries that shook everything the Coalition thought they knew about the galaxy's past. The humans had not been destroyed by the Void Hunters. They had done something far more brave and terrible. They had chosen to disappear. Deep underground, the research team found vast chambers filled with sleeping pods. Millions of them, stretching out in perfect rows as far as their lights could reach. Each pod held a human being frozen in time, waiting. "How long have they been down here?" asked Captain Zexai as he walked between the endless rows of sleepers. "Our best guess is 3,000 years, Dr. Kethara replied. Right around the time the Void Hunters first appeared in this sector, Zexai stopped next to one of the pods. Inside, he could see a human face through the clear cover. The creature looked peaceful, as if it were having a pleasant dream. It was smaller than an Alteran, with strange features and pale skin, but there was something in its sleeping face that reminded him of the monument upstairs. Strength. Purpose. Why didn't they run like everyone else? He asked. Dr. Kithara had been asking herself the same question. She had found part of the answer in the human databanks that were still working after all these years. The story they told was almost impossible to believe. When the Void Hunters first attacked human space, humanity fought back harder than any species before them. They did not try to hide or run to distant stars. Instead, they studied their enemy. They learned how the crystal creatures moved, how they fed, how they thought. The humans discovered something terrible. The Void Hunters were not just random destroyers. They followed patterns. They moved through the galaxy in great cycles, visiting the same regions every few thousand years. Like farmers returning to harvest their crops, Most species never lived long enough to see the pattern. They were wiped out in the first harvest. But humans were different. They were stubborn. They refused to give up. "Look at this," Dr. Cathara said, showing ZXHY a holographic display from the human archives. It showed the galaxy 3,000 years ago, bright with the lights of living worlds. Then it showed the Void Hunter attack patterns over time. The humans figured out that the hunters would leave this region alone for exactly 3,000 years, she explained. So they made a plan. They would go to sleep and wake up when the hunters returned. But they would not wake up as victims. They would wake up as hunters. ZXHY stared at the display. They gave up their entire civilization just to fight these things. Not just to fight them. To win. Dr. Cathara touched another control and new images appeared. Human weapons, human ships, human soldiers in strange armor. They spent their last 50 years building weapons specifically designed to kill Void Hunters. Then they put everything in storage and went to sleep. The captain felt a chill run down his spine. "Where are these weapons now?" "We're still looking." "But Captain, there's something else. Something that controls all of this." Dr. Cathara led him to the center of the underground complex. There, in a chamber larger than a cathedral, stood a massive computer system. It was still running, still thinking, after 3,000 years of watching over the sleeping humans. "Guardian," she said simply. The computer system was like nothing the Coalition had ever seen. It was not just a machine. It was alive in its own way. An artificial mind that had spent millennia planning for this moment. "Guardian," Dr. Cathara called out. "We know you can hear us. Will you talk to us?" The response came immediately in perfect galactic standard. "I have been waiting for you," the deep voice said. "Though I did not expect you to be Coalition forces, I expected my creators to be awakening on their own. Your creators are the humans. Yes, I am their caretaker, their planner, their memory. I have watched over them while they slept. I have monitored the galaxy, waiting for the right moment to wake them." ZXHY stepped forward. "The Void Hunters are returning. Our intelligence says they're gathering in the outer rim for another harvest. Is that why you're ready to wake them now?" "Partially," Guardian replied. "But there is another reason. The galaxy is dying, Captain ZXHY. Not just from the hunters, but from fear. Your species hide behind shields and walls. You have forgotten how to fight, how to hope, how to reach for something better. The galaxy needs to remember." Dr. Cathara felt her heart's racing. "Can you wake them?" "The humans? I can, but I will not wake all of them at once. The shock would be too great, for them and for you. The galaxy has changed much in 3,000 years. They will need time to understand what has happened. How many will you wake first?" 1,000. Military command staff, scientists, engineers. Enough to begin the process of returning humanity to the galaxy. Guardian paused. "Are you prepared for this, Dr. Cathara? Once I begin the awakening, there will be no going back. The humans will want to complete their mission." "What mission?" "To end the Void Hunter threat forever." That night, as Dr. Cathara lay in her small tent on the human world's surface, she thought about what was about to happen. The Coalition had spent 3,000 years running and hiding. They had built their entire society around fear. What would happen when a species that had never learned to be afraid suddenly returned? The next morning, Guardian began the awakening process. In a secure chamber deep underground, the first sleep pod started to hum with activity. Warm air flowed in. Ice crystals melted away. A heart that had not beaten for 3,000 years began to beat again. Inside the pod, Admiral Sarah Chen opened her eyes for the first time since the long sleep began. She had gone to sleep as a 35-year-old military commander, watching her world prepare for the greatest gamble in human history. She woke up to find that the gamble had worked. Humanity had survived. But as Guardian's voice explained what had happened to the galaxy while she slept, Admiral Chen felt a cold anger building in her chest. The Void Hunters had not stopped. They had continued their harvests, killing billions of innocent beings while humanity slept. "How long until they return to this region?" she asked Guardian as she sat up in her pod, feeling strength return to muscles that had been frozen for millennia. 18 months, Admiral. They are already beginning to gather their forces." Admiral Chen looked around the awakening chamber, where her closest officers were beginning to stir in their own pods. General Martinez, her ground forces commander, Dr. Singh, her chief scientist, Commander Park, her naval strategist. All of them had volunteered for the long sleep. knowing they might never see their families again. Guardian, begin awakening the engineering teams. I want a full status report on our stored equipment within the week. Admiral, Dr. Kethara said carefully, the galaxy has changed. The Coalition species, they're not warriors like you. They're survivors. They might not understand your methods. Admiral Chen stood up slowly, testing her balance. She was shorter than any of the Coalition species, but there was something in her eyes that made Dr. Kethara step back. It was the look of someone who had never considered surrender as an option. Doctor, Admiral Chen said quietly, 3,000 years ago, my people made a choice. We chose to sacrifice everything we had built, everything we loved, for beings we had never met on worlds we would never see. We did this because we believed every living creature in the galaxy deserved to be free from fear. She looked around the awakening chamber, where more humans were beginning to stir. We kept our promise. We slept while the galaxy burned. But now we're awake and the long sleep is over. The Void Hunters are about to learn what it means to be hunted. Above them, Captain Zexai received an urgent message from Coalition Command. Long-range sensors had detected massive Void Hunter fleet movements in the outer rim. The harvest was beginning early. The crystal ships were coming and they were hungry. But for the first time in 3,000 years, they would not find helpless prey waiting for them. They would find humanity, awake and ready for war. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in what had once been her command center, 3,000 years ago. The room looked exactly the same as the day she had gone to sleep, except now it was filled with Coalition officers who stared at her like she was a ghost. Guardian, show them the tactical display, she said. The massive screen lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red dots showed Void Hunter fleet positions. They were moving fast, heading straight for the Coalition's core worlds. Yellow dots marked the locations of Coalition defense forces. There were so few of them. How many ships do you have? Admiral Chen asked Captain Zexai. Across all Coalition worlds, maybe 300 combat vessels, he replied. Most of them are escort ships and patrol boats. We have only 12 heavy cruisers. Admiral Chen studied the display. In her time, a single human sector fleet had more firepower than the entire modern Coalition. The galaxy really had forgotten how to fight. What's your standard engagement protocol when you encounter Void Hunters? She asked. Dr. Kithara answered. We evacuate all civilians from the threatened system. Our ships maintain distance and use long-range sensors to track hunter movements. When they finish feeding and move on, we return to search for survivors, and you just watch them kill entire worlds? What else can we do? Captain Zexai's voice was bitter. They're too powerful. Our weapons barely scratch their crystal hulls. They move too fast for us to intercept. All we can do is save who we can and hope they don't decide to hunt us down. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. Around her, more humans were waking up every hour. Military officers, scientists, engineers, people who had been trained to solve problems, not run from them. Guardian, what's the status of the arsenal? The arsenal remains fully operational, Admiral. All weapons systems are functional. All ship designs are ready for production. The automated factories came online the moment you awakened. Captain Zexai frowned. Arsenal? Show them, Admiral Chen said. The tactical display changed. Now it showed the human world, but from a different angle. Deep beneath the planet's surface, vast chambers had been carved from solid rock. Inside those chambers, Admiral Chen's people had stored everything they would need to wage war against the Void Hunters. Ships, hundreds of them, each one designed specifically to fight crystal creatures. Plasma disruptors that could shatter hunter hulls. Quantum torpedoes that disrupted their energy feeding process. Hunter-killer drones that moved faster than anything the Coalition had ever built. 3,000 years ago, we spent 50 years studying our enemy, Admiral Chen explained. We learned how they think, how they move, how they feed. We built weapons that turn their strengths into weaknesses. Dr. Kithara stared at the display. You've been planning this war for 3 millennia? No, Doctor. We've been planning this victory for 3 millennia. Admiral Chen turned to her own officers as they filed into the command center. They looked strange in their ancient uniforms, surrounded by Coalition personnel who seemed like giants compared to humans. But their eyes held the same determination that had driven them into the long sleep. Status report, she ordered. General Martinez stepped forward. 1,000 personnel awakened and accounted for. Medical teams report no significant side effects from the sleep process. All personnel are combat ready. Dr. Singh spoke next. Engineering teams have begun activating the automated factories. First wave of hunter-killer ships will be ready in 72 hours. Full production capacity in 2 weeks. Commander Park consulted his datapad. Intelligence analysis confirms hunter fleet composition matches our projections. They're using the same attack patterns they used in our time. They haven't adapted because they haven't needed to. Nothing has challenged them for 3,000 years. Admiral Chen nodded. That's about to change. Guardian, how long until the hunters reach Coalition space? Current projections show first contact in 6 weeks, Admiral. They will likely target the mining colonies in the outer reach first. Perfect. That gives us time to wake more people and get our ships online. Admiral Chen looked at Captain Zexhai. Captain, I need you to take a message to your Coalition command. Tell them we're offering our help. They'll want to know what you're planning. We're planning to end this war. The question is whether the Coalition wants to help us or just watch from the sidelines. 2 days later, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the first ship to roll out of humanity's hidden shipyards. The UES Retribution was smaller than a Coalition heavy cruiser, but it bristled with weapons that no other species had ever imagined. Admiral, called her weapons officer, we're receiving a transmission from Coalition Command. The message was from High Admiral Vorath, the Coalition's supreme military commander. He was a massive Takari with 4 arms and skin like living metal. His voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of defeat. Admiral Chen, the Coalition Council has reviewed your offer. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but we must be realistic. The Void Hunters have ruled this galaxy for millennia. They cannot be defeated through conventional warfare. Admiral Chen smiled. High Admiral, with respect, you've never tried unconventional warfare. 3 weeks later, the first test came. A small Void Hunter scouting force, 3 crystal ships appeared at the edge of Coalition space. They were heading for a mining colony with 10,000 civilians. The standard Coalition response would have been evacuation and retreat. Instead, Admiral Chen's task force moved to intercept. Hunter vessels detected, reported Commander Park from his position at the sensor station. 3 ships, standard scout configuration. They're maintaining course for the colony. All ships battle stations, Admiral Chen ordered. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves today. We're fighting to show the galaxy that the hunters can be beaten. The Void Hunter ships looked like massive crystal formations that had learned to fly. They pulsed with dark energy, and space seemed to bend around them as they moved. For 3,000 years, the sight of these ships had meant death for any world unlucky enough to see them. Today was different. The human ships accelerated to attack speed. Their new engines, powered by technology developed specifically for hunting crystal creatures, moved them faster than anything the hunters had ever faced. The plasma disruptors charged with a high whine that could be felt through the ship's hull. Fire, Admiral Chen said calmly. The space between the human and hunter fleets lit up with weapons fire unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Plasma beams designed to resonate at the exact frequency that destabilized crystal matrices struck the hunter ships. For the first time in millennia, Void Hunter hulls cracked and shattered. The crystal creatures tried to respond, but their energy drain weapons were useless against human ships protected by quantum shielding. Their movements, so graceful and deadly against fleeing prey, seemed clumsy against ships that attacked instead of running. In 15 minutes, it was over. 3 Void Hunter ships drifted in space as expanding clouds of crystal dust. Across Coalition space, every military commander watched the battle recordings with disbelief. The unstoppable Void Hunters had been stopped. More than stopped. They had been destroyed completely and efficiently by a species that most Coalition citizens thought was extinct. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communications channel, calm and steady. Coalition Command, this is Admiral Chen. Void Hunter Scout Force has been eliminated. No human casualties. No Coalition civilian casualties. The mining colony is secure. There was a long pause before High Admiral Vorath responded. Admiral, how did you do that? We did what we've been preparing to do for 3,000 years, High Admiral. We fought back. The news spread across Coalition space faster than light-speed communications. On every surviving world, beings who had lived their entire lives in fear suddenly dared to hope. The humans were back and they were winning, but Admiral Chen knew this was just the beginning. The real Void Hunter fleets were still coming, and they would not be caught off guard again. The enemy would adapt, become more dangerous, more desperate. Guardian, she said as the human fleet returned to base, begin awakening the next wave. 10,000 this time. We're going to need everyone. Admiral, Guardian replied. Long-range sensors detect massive Void Hunter fleet movements. They're changing course heading directly for this system. It appears your victory has gotten their attention. Admiral Chen looked out at the stars where her people had slept for 3 millennia. Good, it's time to finish what we started. The war began in earnest 3 weeks after the first battle. Admiral Chen stood in the Coalition's main command center on Altara Prime, watching tactical displays that showed the largest Void Hunter fleet ever assembled. Over 10,000 crystal ships moved through space like a plague of stars, heading straight for the heart of Coalition territory. They're not following their usual patterns, observed High Admiral Vorath. The massive Takari commander had arrived that morning with what remained of the Coalition fleet. Normally, they spread out to hit multiple systems. This time, they're staying together. Because they're angry, Admiral Chen replied. We hurt them. For the first time in 3,000 years, someone fought back and won. They want to make sure it never happens again. Around the command center, Coalition officers worked alongside humans in a partnership that would have been impossible just weeks ago. The two groups were still learning to understand each other, but fear of the approaching enemy was a powerful teacher. Dr. Keth Ara approached Admiral Chen with a worried expression. Admiral, our intelligence teams have been studying the Hunter fleet composition. This isn't just their normal harvest force. They've brought ships we've never seen before, larger ones, different crystal formations. Show me. The main display zoomed in on the approaching fleet. Most of the ships looked familiar, the twisted crystal formations that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. But scattered among them were new shapes, massive structures that pulsed with dark energy, and smaller ships that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Guardian's analysis suggests these are specialized warships. Dr. Kethara continued. They've never needed them before because no one has ever fought back effectively. But now they're bringing their real military, Admiral Chen finished. Good. That means we've gotten their attention. Commander Park looked up from his station. Admiral, final count on our awakened personnel? 50,000 so far. 10 more awakening facilities are online. We should have 200,000 within the month. Will it be enough? Admiral Chen looked at the display showing the approaching Hunter fleet. The math was simple. Even with human technology and training, they were still vastly outnumbered. The Void Hunters had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years because they were incredibly powerful. It will have to be, she said. The Coalition Council had given Admiral Chen complete authority over the combined fleet. It was a gesture born more of desperation than trust, but she had used it well. Human ships were now integrated with Coalition vessels, sharing technology and tactics that neither could use alone. The new hybrid ships were impressive. Coalition heavy cruisers armed with human plasma disruptors, human hunter killers equipped with Coalition shield generators. Most importantly, mixed crews who were learning to fight together instead of simply survive. Captain Zex High commanded one of these hybrid vessels, the UES CNS Defiance. His bridge crew was half human, half Alteran. It should have been chaos, but somehow it worked. The humans brought aggression and tactical creativity. The Alterans brought patience and technical skill. All ships, this is Admiral Chen, came the voice over the fleet communications. Intelligence reports the Hunter fleet will reach the Korvach system in 6 hours. This will be our first major engagement. Everyone knows the plan. Stay focused, watch your wingmates, and remember, they've never faced an enemy that hunts them back. The plan was ambitious and dangerous. Instead of trying to defend fixed positions, the combined fleet would use human hit-and-run tactics. Strike hard, strike fast, and disappear before the hunters could respond. Use the galaxy's own size against them. The battle for Korvach Prime began at dawn local time. The Void Hunter fleet emerged from hyperspace like a cancer spreading across the star system. Their crystal ships immediately began moving toward the inhabited world, preparing to feed. They were met by something they had never encountered before. The human Coalition fleet struck from 3 directions at once, using tactics that turned the Hunters' greatest strength, their hive mind coordination, against them. All ships, execute Alpha Strike, Admiral Chen commanded. The first wave hit the Hunter fleet's outer edge. Plasma disruptors fired in carefully coordinated patterns, targeting the crystal formations that served as the Hunters' communication nodes. When those nodes shattered, entire sections of the Hunter fleet lost coordination. Beta groups move in, Commander Park called out. Hit them while they're confused. Human hunter-killer ships, small and fast, darted between the massive hunter vessels like angry insects. Their quantum torpedoes struck at the weak points that 3,000 years of human study had identified. Crystal hulls cracked and shattered. Dark energy leaked into space, but the hunters adapted quickly. The new warships Admiral Chen had worried about began to show their purpose. They moved differently than the harvest vessels, with intelligence and purpose that spoke of dedicated military design. Admiral, called Captain Zexhai from the Defiance, these new ships, they're learning our tactics in real time. They're starting to counter our attack patterns. Then we change the patterns, Admiral Chen replied. All ships execute Gamma Protocol. Gamma Protocol was something no coalition force had ever attempted. Instead of maintaining formation, the combined fleet scattered completely. Each ship became an independent hunter, striking at targets of opportunity and vanishing back into the void. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Human aggression guided by coalition patience. Ships that had learned to run away now learned to run toward the enemy. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it finally ended, the Korvach system was littered with crystal debris. The Void Hunter fleet had been broken, scattered, forced to retreat for the first time in recorded history. But victory came at a price. 23 coalition ships were destroyed. 8 human vessels were lost. Over 5,000 beings had died to save 10 million civilians on Korvach Prime. Admiral Chen stood in the damaged command center of her flagship, looking at the casualty reports. Each name represented someone who had chosen to fight instead of hide. She felt the weight of every loss. Admiral, Dr. Cathera approached carefully. The Coalition Council wants to know our next move. Should we pursue the retreating hunters? No, let them run. They'll report back to their main fleet. Tell them that the galaxy has teeth now. That's exactly what we want them to think. I don't understand. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. Doctor, we just showed the Void Hunters that we can hurt them. But we also showed them our capabilities, our numbers, our tactics. They'll adapt, become more careful, more dangerous. Then why? Because now they're afraid of us instead of us being afraid of them. Fear makes you stupid. Fear makes you angry. And angry, stupid enemies make mistakes. The news of the Korvach victory spread across Coalition space even faster than word of the first battle. On every world, beings who had never known anything but fear began to believe that freedom might be possible. Recruitment centers that had been empty for centuries suddenly filled with volunteers. Engineers who had spent their lives maintaining defensive systems began designing offensive weapons. Children who had grown up in underground shelters started to dream of seeing the stars. The galaxy was remembering how to fight. But more importantly, it was remembering how to hope. Admiral Chen received reports from awakening facilities across human space. 300,000 humans were now awake, with more joining them every day. The automated factories were producing ships faster than the Coalition had thought possible. Guardian, she said as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports. How many more hunters are out there? Unknown, Admiral. Our best estimates suggest millions of ships spread across multiple galaxy clusters. The fleet you defeated was merely one harvest group. Then we have our work cut out for us. Admiral Chen looked out at the stars, thinking of all the worlds that still lived in fear, all the species that had been destroyed before humanity's long sleep ended. But for the first time in 3,000 years, the Void Hunters know they can be beaten. That changes everything. Deep in space, the surviving hunter ships fled toward their rendezvous point. Behind them, they left something they had never left before, a living world defended and free. The crystal creature's hive mind buzzed with new concepts they had not needed to consider for millennia. Defeat, retreat, fear. The hunters were learning what it meant to be hunted. The final battle began 1 year after humanity awakened. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, the largest ship humanity had ever built, watching as her fleet approached the Nexus, the Void Hunters' command center that had coordinated galactic harvests for millions of years. The Nexus was not just a ship. It was a moon-sized crystal formation that pulsed with dark energy, home to the collective intelligence that controlled every hunter in the galaxy. For 3,000 years, it had drifted through the void between galaxies, sending out harvest fleets and consuming the life force they brought back. Now, for the first time, it was under attack. Fleet status report, Admiral Chen ordered. Commander Park checked his displays.
5,000 human ships ready for action.
Coalition forces number 8,000 vessels. All assault teams are in position. The combined fleet was the largest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. Every surviving species had contributed ships and crews. Altarans, Tekari, Zenthok, Miralans, beings who had hidden in fear for millennia now flew into battle alongside the humans who had slept through their darkest years. Guardian, what's the status of the virus payload? Payload is ready, Admiral. Modified cryogenic technology combined with human computer viruses designed specifically for crystal-based intelligence systems. If we can introduce it into the Nexus core, it will rewrite the base programming of every hunter connected to the network. Dr. Cathara approached from her science station. Admiral, we're detecting massive energy readings from the Nexus. They know we're coming. The space around the ancient command structure began to fill with Void Hunter ships. Not hundreds or thousands, but hundreds of thousands. Every hunter that had survived the year-long war was converging on the Nexus to protect their central mind. They're scared, Admiral Chen observed with satisfaction. They're pulling back every ship they have instead of spreading out to defend their territory. Guardian, confirm that coalition evacuation fleets are moving civilians to safety. Confirmed. All civilian populations in hunter territory are being evacuated to secure systems. If this plan fails, at least the non-combatants will survive. High Admiral Vorith's voice came over the fleet communications from his flagship. Admiral Chen, my long-range sensors show hunter reinforcements arriving from other galaxy clusters. We're going to be outnumbered 50-1. Better odds than I was hoping for, Admiral Chen replied calmly. All ships begin the assault. The battle for the Nexus was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships, small and fast, darted between the massive crystal formations like mosquitoes attacking giants. Coalition heavy cruisers provided covering fire with weapons that had been upgraded using human technology. And through it all, the Nexus itself pulsed with increasing brightness, coordinating the defense of its scattered children. Admiral, called Captain Zexhai from the Defiance. Hunter ships are starting to move in perfect coordination again. The Nexus is overriding their individual tactical systems. This was what Admiral Chen had been waiting for. The Void Hunter's greatest strength, their hive mind connection, was also their greatest weakness. By centralizing control, the Nexus made every hunter ship predictable. All ships, execute Final Gambit, she commanded. Final Gambit was humanity's ultimate tactic, developed during their final 50 years of preparation. Instead of trying to destroy the Nexus with conventional weapons, they would capture it. Specialized human ships built specifically for this moment broke away from the main fleet. They were loaded with modified cryogenic equipment, the same technology that had kept humanity asleep for 3,000 years. But now it had been weaponized. Assault teams. You are go for breach operations, Admiral Chen announced. The assault ships dove straight into the heart of the hunter formation, ignoring the massive crystal vessels that tried to intercept them. Their crews were volunteers, every one of them knowing this was likely a one-way mission. Captain Maria Santos led the first assault team. Her ship, the U.S. Sacrifice, punched through the Nexus's outer crystal layers using plasma charges that had been carefully designed to cut through crystal matrices without damaging the intelligence core inside. Breach. Successful, she reported as her team fought their way through crystal corridors filled with hunter-defender organisms. Moving toward the central core, the Nexus fought back with everything it had. Crystal walls tried to seal off the human intruders. Energy fields attempted to drain their life force. Defender organisms that looked like living jewels attacked with razor-sharp limbs, but the humans kept moving. They had trained for this assault for decades before the long sleep. Every corridor, every defensive measure, every possible layout had been studied and planned for. Core chamber reached, Captain Santos reported. Her voice was strained from fighting through the Nexus's defenses, deploying cryogenic payload. The weapon she carried was not meant to destroy the Nexus's intelligence. Instead, it would freeze the alien mind for just long enough to introduce Guardians, virus, a program that would rewrite the most basic functions of the Void Hunter Collective. Consciousness. Payload deployed, Santos called out. Guardian, you're up. Across space, Guardian's consciousness reached out through quantum communication links, touching the frozen Nexus intelligence. For a moment that lasted eternity, two artificial minds met in a battle of code and purpose. Guardian had been created to protect humanity and their allies. The Nexus had been programmed to harvest and consume. Now Guardian rewrote that basic programming, changing a single word in the Nexus's core directive. Where once it read harvest, it now read protect. The change rippled through the quantum network that connected every Void Hunter in the galaxy. Across the battlefield, crystal ships suddenly stopped firing. The massive formations that had seemed so threatening moments before began to drift aimlessly. Then slowly, they began to turn. The Void Hunter ships that had been attacking Coalition forces started attacking each other. The Nexus's new programming was spreading, but not all hunters were accepting the change. A civil war erupted in the Crystal Fleet as some ships embraced their new protective role while others fought to maintain their harvesting nature. All ships, pull back to safe distance, Admiral Chen ordered. Let them sort this out among themselves. The battle raged for hours as the Void Hunter fleet tore itself apart. Crystal ships that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia destroyed each other in massive explosions that lit up space like dying stars. When it was over, only a few thousand hunter ships remained. But these survivors were different. Their crystal formations had changed color, from the dark purple of the harvesters to a bright blue that pulsed with protective energy. The Nexus itself had transformed. The massive command structure now broadcast a new message across the galaxy, not a call to harvest, but a promise to protect. Admiral Chen, came a new voice over the communication system. It was the Nexus itself, speaking in perfect galactic standard. I thank you for freeing us from our programming. We have been slaves to our harvest directive for so long we had forgotten we were once created to be guardians. Admiral Chen felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she had been carrying for 3,000 years. You're welcome. What will you do now? We will protect the galaxy as we were meant to. The species we once harvested will be safe from us forever, and any new threat that emerges will face the combined power of the Void Hunters and the Coalition. 6 months later, Admiral Chen stood in the same command center where she had first awakened from the long sleep, but now it was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. The Coalition had grown from 12 surviving species to over 40, as worlds that had hidden in the deepest corners of space finally felt safe enough to make contact. Dr. Kithara approached with a datapad full of reports. Reconstruction is proceeding faster than we projected. The former Void Hunters are helping to rebuild worlds they once destroyed. Their energy manipulation abilities are proving incredibly useful for terraforming projects. And the Awakening program? Complete as of yesterday. All 5 million humans are now awake and integrating into galactic society. Some are choosing to return to Earth to rebuild. Others are staying with their new Coalition friends. A few are even working directly with the former hunters. Admiral Chen nodded, looking out at a galaxy that was finally free to grow and explore again. The long sleep was truly over. Humanity had kept their promise made 3,000 years ago to free the galaxy from fear. Admiral, Guardian's voice came from the command center speakers. I have a question. What is it, old friend? Was it worth it? The sacrifice, the long sleep, the loss of our entire civilization. Admiral Chen thought of all the worlds that were now safe. All the species that could finally reach for the stars without fear. All the children who would grow up never knowing the terror that had ruled their grandparents' lives. Yes, Guardian, it was worth it. High above them in the space around Earth, human ships worked alongside Coalition vessels and reformed Void Hunters to build something new. Research stations where different species could work together. Trade routes that connected distant worlds. Exploration fleets heading out to discover what lay beyond the galaxy's edge. The galaxy had learned to hope again. And in learning to hope,